Hi everyone, how are you? So we are just admitting our participants. So maybe we can just wait for 2 more minutes as we admit more of our guests. Hello everyone. So I think we can go ahead and start our webinar. Are you all ready? Okay. So hello everyone. I'm Pearl Ante-Testard, Planetary Health Alliance Campus Ambassador and one of the co-founders of Planet or Planetary Health Network of Young Professionals. We are a network of young professionals passionate about planetary health. We promote and advocate for planetary health through education, as we are doing now through a webinar, advocacy, and creativity. We also believe that raising awareness of young professionals of today about planetary health will help pave the way towards a sustainable future. Our team would like to thank all of you for participating in today's second Planetary Health webinar series entitled How Planetary Health is Relevant to Each Profession, or How Can Each Profession Be Planet Responsible, specifically academia, innovations, and artificial intelligence. As we continue to experience the effects of anthropogenic or man-made disruptions on the planet, such as climate change, natural disasters, and even pandemic, doing our professions in ways that are sustainable and planet responsible is an essential transformation for our survival as a human civilization. We hope that this webinar will inspire and help you to be planet responsible professionals. Kurt, could you please share the program. So here is our program for today. After this introduction, Ms. Katie Palmer, Planet member, will discuss about webinar house rules, and she'll introduce our first two speakers, Dr. Kévin Jean and Ms. Barbara Chai. It will be immediately followed by the speakers' presentations. Then we will have a 5-minute bio break. After the bio break, Mr. Kurt Mamisao, Planet co-founder, will introduce our third speaker, Ms. Léa Gagnon-Roberge, and will be followed by the speaker's presentation. After all the talks, there will be a 15-minute Q&A session moderated by Planet's Dr. Olwenn Martin. And lastly, a short summary and closing at the end by yours truly. Katie, please take the floor.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming on time. So just to start with a few house rules, please keep your microphone muted throughout and turn off your camera to save on bandwidth if you haven't already. We will be recording this webinar and possibly posting it to social media. So if you don't want to be shown, then definitely keep your camera off and your microphone muted. You can still ask questions. If you have any questions, you can write in the chat box at any time. And during the question and answer session at the end, we will bring up the questions. Alternatively, if you want to ask a question yourself, then you can wait till the end and virtually raise your hand, and you'll be called on, and you can turn on your microphone and video at that point if you require to ask the question. And please tweet about the webinar and tag our account at planetyp_YP or using the hashtag #PlanetResponsibleProfessionals. Okay. So our first speaker today will be Kévin Jean. He is Assistant Professor in Epidemiology at Conservatoire National des Arts et Métiers in Paris. He works on infectious disease epidemiology and modelling to understand the biological, behavioural and social determinants of infectious disease transmission, as well as to prevent and control infectious diseases. Some diseases he has worked on include HIV, yellow fever and hepatitis C. He's also been involved in projects relating to climate justice, citizen science, and encouraging social and environmental responsibility of the academic sector. Our second speaker today is Barbara Chai. She is co-founder and director of the Plant Technology Alliance. She has developed a training program to raise spiritual awareness through nature and is currently working with experts from around the world on a virtual simulation training program that aims to promote sustainability transformation of businesses, mainly in China. She studied at Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University in the US and is also a financial technology journalist for a Hong Kong-based media company. Okay, over to you, Kévin Jean.
Thank you very much, Katie, for the nice introduction. So let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good. Thank you very much. So just to clarify, I will speak today as an academic, as Katie nicely presented, but also as the board member of an NGO, a French NGO called Sciences Citoyennes, which works in the interface between science, society, and democracy. And also I have a small conflict of interest today because I am also the PhD supervisor of Pearl, one of the co-founders of the seminar. So, I will speak about the environmental responsibility in the academic sector, especially why we have to my sense, specific duties and responsibility within the academic sectors. So I'm pretty sure that I don't have to convince you about the importance of acting now regarding global changes, climate change, but I think always nice to share the way we try to present it, to present this emergency outside. So to me, one of the most striking figure to present this, to advocate for this urgent need of action is from the 2018 report of the IPCC on climate change and the so-called 1.5 degree report. So here you can see on that figure that you may know that from the Paris agreements, the states have accepted the target of to reach net zero emissions of greenhouse gas emissions by roughly around the middle of the 21st century. And here in the left of the panel, you can see two different targets. The one is reaching net zero CO2 emission in 2040, and the second presents just a small delay in reaching this net zero, which is reaching net zero in 2055. But actually, you know that CO2 accumulates in the atmosphere, and that taking too much time to fulfill this objective will translate into an added concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. This is the difference here in the panel in right. So if you reach net zero in 2040, you reach that level of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. And if you delay this objective, you reach that level in gray. And this small difference is actually the difference between 1.5 degree of climate warming and 2 degrees of climate warming, and the difference between these both scenarios are actually huge. One of the most important, most striking difference is that, as you may know, every degrees of climate warming brings us closer to climate tipping points. You may know this tipping point that are points that are actually difficult to predict, but we think that if we reach these points, we can enter a new regimen of climate because of non-linearity systems, and that will put us in a situation that we can't really foresee, but which will be very difficult, that will basically change the climate regimen. So the most known of these climate tipping point are, for example, the melting of the permafrost, or the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, the Arctic sea ice, and also the massive fires in the Amazon rainforest. And so once again, each degrees in climate change bring us closer to this tipping point. And honestly, you don't want to reach this tipping point. This is why Valérie Masson-Delmotte, which was the lead author of the IPCC report 2018, has this quote saying, "Every half degree counts, every year counts, every choice counts." So this is kind of the introduction why we should act, and why we should act now and not delaying this action. This is true for climate warming, but this is also true for biodiversity loss and overall, like all these global changes that we are facing for the moment, and that are relevant when we are interested in planetary Earth. So now, why is the academic sector specifically challenged in facing this need for action, this urgency of actions? First, the academic sector is specifically challenged because the academic sector is one of the source of numerous warnings. You may have heard of the warnings to humanity and the second warnings to humanity. There are texts that have been signed by tens of thousands of scientists urging societies and politics to take actions to tackle climate change. There has been many replication of these calls that were even more and more serious and dramatic. And more recently in France, we have been this call from southern scientists calling to the rebellion, basically saying that previous calls have not been heard, so we need to have go one step further and join civil disobedience movements, such as, for example, Extinction Rebellion. You may have heard, because previous calls have not been heard, and we need to take action now, and we need to do all what we can to have this climate crisis faced by politics and societies. So this is one of the reasons why environmental responsibility is something specific for the academic sector. The other is that as scientists, we are well trained to critically assess the urgency of the situation. So we have access to the literature, we understand the methods that brings us the evidence about climate change, about biodiversity loss, and we are also trained to assess the different levels of actions, the different transitions we could trigger, we could implement. So this is to me why, as scientists, we have this kind of specific environmental responsibility. But for all warnings to be considered, and this is also linked to the question of responsibility, we need to be exemplary. If we are the community, the scientific community, and the professional sector rising alerts, then we must ourselves take these alerts seriously, and this puts us in a situation where we have to be exemplary. This has been, for example, underlined recently with, this is just an example, but an example of a climate scientist conference, scientific conference that emitted tons and tons of CO2. And this has been highly criticized, saying that how can the warmings be credible, be listened by the public, if also scientists burn more fuels, emit more CO2 than every other citizens? How can we be listened to in that situation? And that's why we have this kind of duty of exemplarism. So today I will briefly talk about this responsibility in academics. And to that, I will discuss about the direct and the indirect impact of the academic sector. So as direct impact, academics, as all professional activities, carry an environmental footprint. You can think about greenhouse gas emissions, energy use, waste, and this is something we should face, we should tackle. But we, as academics, we also have an indirect impact, because as academics, we have two main activities, which are teaching and doing research, and both activities aim at shaping tomorrow's world. And so in that sense, we also need to consider this indirect impact or action as scientists, as academics may have on the world, on tomorrow's world. And this is the point I will strike, that I will raise, that all these questions need individual but also institutional involvement. So some points about the direct environmental impact of research activities. So as I mentioned, in our daily occupational activity as academics, we have some impact, we have a footprint, and this footprint depends on the professional practices that also depend on the academic field. You can have field missions that needs you to go to the field, collect data. You can use more or less material depending on the academic field you're in. You can use more or less intensive computational machines demands depending on your, once again, on your academic field. But what is interesting at the moment is that several carbon impact assessments have now been made available at various levels, at the level of individual labs, academies, and in different academic fields. So I refer here to different studies for, once again, different groups, labs, or teams in different scopes, like for example, digital sciences, atmospheric sciences, oceanography, or at the scale of a university. And once these guys did these carbon footprint assessments and shared the results, we can see that some pattern emerge, so clear pattern emerge clearly despite the diversity of practices and academic fields. And here are the most striking shared results of these different carbon footprint assessments within the academic sector. First, in average, in these assessments, we can see that academics level of emission, of greenhouse gas emission, represents once to twice the level of an average European Union citizens. And this is just for their occupational level of emissions. So this doesn't account for the level of emission these academics may have in their private life. When we consider only professional activities, an average academic do emit once to twice the level of European Union citizens. So we emit more than any other citizen in Europe and in the globe. Second lesson is that the greenhouse gas emissions are really unequally distributed, and typically you have 10% of the staff that is often responsible of 50% of more of the global level of emissions. And guess what? These are not the junior scientists, but these are the senior scientists, more like the head of departments that concentrates these high level of emissions. And third lesson, which is very important to me, is that air travel always represent the most important source of greenhouse gas emission, between roughly 50% and 90%, and this is depending on the field, the academic field you're working in. For example, this 55% is from the lab of oceanography that I mentioned. We do have, they guys do have a lot of field mission with boats in the oceans, but still air travel represents the most important source of greenhouse gas emissions. And for other people working with computational material, here air travel represents roughly 90% of greenhouse gas emissions. So now that you have these results, I want you to think quickly about the frequent environmental policies you can see, we can witness in academics. I guess that you've always seen encouragement to waste your, to sort your waste, to turn lights off, or to print less. This is useful and this is a good first step, but my question is, are we really reaching the target here? The point that I want to see is that we need here evidence-based environmental policies to really reach the targets we want, to really decrease our footprint. If we are serious in reducing our footprint, then the conclusion is that let's fly less. So some air travels are useful for research and highly substitutable, like field missions, but others are very less useful or necessary, it says, like conferences and international meetings, for example. But why I mentioned that in the beginning, why here the institutional context matters is because actually academic rules do encourage this international mobility. We are, as scientists, who track records, we are evaluated on their track records, and they integrate scientific presentations in scientific conferences, presence in international consortium meetings. So the question is, how you can imagine to change quickly the practices, whole practices, if we stay embedded in a system that rewards high emission behaviors instead of discouraging it. And this is why we can consider that individual involvement is crucial, but we need also supportive institutional environments that are based on, like, here again, evidence. Hopefully there are some institutions that pave the way for this kind of environmental policy. Some example here in the UK and in Switzerland. And here are some of these principles that are really like just scientific thinking, evidence-based thinking. First is, do monitor your emissions, your footprint, to identify where you can reduce the most. Then take public engagement of reduction of these footprints. You can use approaches such as avoid and mitigate, for example, considering alternatives such as web conferences. And I must say here that the COVID-19 crisis has done much more than every advocacy we did before for web conferences. People were very skeptical about web conferences, but we had the proof of concept that it works, and it works pretty well during the COVID-19 crisis. And then you can also, as an institution, encourage, stimulate, or reward good behaviors, for example, including carbon sobriety criteria in the evaluation of scientists, teams, research projects. So once again, these are the institutional changes we want to see, and we will need to encourage our institution to adopt them. This is one of the conclusions. I will come back to that. In terms of responsibility in academia, as I mentioned, we have two main activities, teaching and researching. So as for teaching, well, this is the basic. The environmental crisis will impact every sector you can imagine. There is no single sector or academic field that won't be impacted by global changes. So the conclusion is that it should be taught, like the stakes of global changes must be taught in all academic programs. So if you are involved in teaching in any way, and you have this freedom of adapting your message. Do integrate there's climate change, there's environmental teaching, share resources with others, and include that within your teaching. So we have another question to raise here about research. So I talked about the indirect impact of research, and here we must think also the objects of research, and ask ourselves whether the research we are conducting is really leading the world in a direction we want, that is desirable for a planet that can keep life in it, and human life and human society as best. And this is a very touchy topic, because here we are discussing the object of research of your colleagues or researchers, and this is really touchy. But I think this is a reflection we must have collectively into the academic sector. Scientists don't really like that others judge their research topics and assess the way they are conducting research, that they discuss their object topic. But we have examples to say that scientists are actually not so good at imagining the possible uses and misuses of their research. And here I won't enter into the detail, but I joined two references, example of human genetic engineering and artificial intelligence, that we'll talk about that later today. So I'm really curious to hear about that. So my point here is, like, we need to promote the debate about extended stakes of our own research objects in all different dimensions: ethical, environmental, economical, and social dimensions. So how do we do now to promote this environmental responsibility in academia? So as I told you, we do have a crucial role in including and promoting environmental responsibility in our own practice as academics. This is the duty of exemplarism I commented earlier. And also because if we manage to have coordinated action in our own professional sectors, then it could start a ripple effect into other professional sectors and convince others, basically. So I hope that I convinced you that we need responsible individuals, but we also require responsible institutions, and we need to discuss, to federate, to spread, to share, to push our own institutions to adopt their environmental responsibility that we think is really necessary. So this is my point. Here in the French context, we have this kind of groups that are emerging in the recent years. I gave you some links, and these are academics from very various sectors that are joining together to try to think about how we can address this environmental responsibility in research, and you have other links here. It was a bit longer, sorry about that. If you have any questions, any further discussion, you have my contact, and I include you some links and references. So, yeah, I think I've been a bit too long, but sorry about that. Thank you very much. So, any question at the moment, or should I just shut down my microphone, shut the video?
Yes, thank you, Kevin, for that very insightful talk.
Thank
Now I
you.
think we'll move on to Ms. Barbara Chai's presentation.
Oh, hi. Hi, Pearl. Thank you. Yeah, let me shift to my screen. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy today be here introducing Plant Technology Alliance and the training program that we have designed to promote spirituality. Plant Technology Alliance, PTA, trying to connect innovative approaches to protect the environment and from all over the world, which include the resources from the technology, the business, finance, and also public education, and also media. The original three co-founders are Dancy, my partner. She's based in Hong Kong. I'm right now in New York City, and Judy from Taipei. Dancy is creator and host of China's first natural educational podcast for kids, Nature's Magic 1. Judy is creator and host of PTAC Academy, which is held regularly Wednesday night. I have been working closely with the American professional training agency to introduce how business can lead the sustainability transformation into China. This program is designed by Dr. Stuart Hart, one of the leading experts in this field. Also, we have been working very closely to organize business visits and trips in Taipei, Shanghai, and New York City. These seminars are cross-regional, but right now, all of these seminars we are designing actually based on Zoom. So why we have started doing this Green Spirit Growth Camp? It's actually coming from idea when people were locked down during pandemic. Well, back then, as pretty much similar with every other organizations, all of the projects in our platform was going very, very slowly, almost stopped. And so my partners are discussing with me, what we can do to deliver a message to protect the environment. So we decided to do something. So what we are going to do, are we going to design a training program which is based on knowledge, or are we going to design a program which is spirituality oriented? Here's something that Dancy and me shared in common. Both of us actually all experience green spirit in nature. Dancy used to be one of the best mountain climber in Tsinghua University in Beijing. I have been practicing mindful meditation in nature for many years. And both of us experienced the power and energy in nature, and we have received love and relaxation and also relief in nature. Dancy actually comes from a very remote town in Jiangxi province. When she first came into Beijing 15 years ago, she was very lost because the competition back then at school was very, 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 very fierce. And also because she wasn't that confident, to become very successful to live in Beijing. Only after she was admitted into the mountain climbing club in Tsinghua University, she started realizing that she's very capable to become a mountain climber. And she received this power and in nature, and she started realizing the purpose of her life when she helping other mountain climbers to fix all the problems when they're doing the multiple weeks of a very hard journey. For me, the story is a little bit different. And I, after I graduated from Fletcher School in Boston, I started suffering from a lot of pains, muscle pains and bone pains, spine pains for a long time. I went to medication and really no effective pills back then solved the problem. But until I started practicing meditation in nature, gradually I found a very important recovery. And 3 months after I started doing meditation in natural parks, all the pains are gone. So we have really, received this a power from nature, and we feel the inner peace and spiritual tranquility. And both of us understand that, when we witnessing when nature getting angry and when nature giving the punishment to human being, they're gonna be a big problem for everybody. So, and now we going back to original questions. How are we going to design this training program? This is the questions that I always ask myself. By being disconnected with nature, do we traumatize ourselves physically and spiritually? By damaging nature and our living environment, do we actually damage our fellow human beings? And how could we change communication and repair relations with the nature and our fellow human beings? So there are 5 levels of healings from the green spirit to planetary wellness. First level actually is the individual healing through reconnected to nature and feeling wholeness with the nature. The second is a social healing step from individual disconnection with nature to building up the collective social bondage. And third level is individual and social responsibility action inspired by environmental, social, economic awareness. And the fourth level is a collective transformation to SDG-driven society. And the final level is what we are discussing today, is the more ideal way of planetary wellness, which includes both physical health and spiritual health. So we designed this program starting from picking a nature name for everybody. For example, we have a caterpillar here, and we have a rose, and we have a dust, we have a forest in our training camp. And weekly, we invited members to play a group game and encourage them to use the nature name. And also, we follow the Native American principle of talking circle, and we also choose 2 materials from internet. One is Nature is Speaking. Let me click into it to show everybody.
Some call me nature. Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years, 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Okay.
The other one is Mohawk Thanksgiving praying. So when we use this material, we assign a different person with the different roles, and to each one finish one paragraph. For example, like the waters. So there will be one person use his or her nature name to read this paragraph to everybody, and everybody else were listening very carefully with the full respect. So we also use a variety of different digital tools, for example, Zoom, for example, WeChat, and also another karaoke app. We also use a WeChat-based mini clocking app. Now, this clocking app has been actually widely used in China, so that the people, especially living in the cities with a very busy schedule, and they can strengthen their daily schedules and become highly principled and effective professionals. So this app is widely used by this group of people. So we use the digital platforms, and we have been trying to transform the digital tool toward a social container where healings take place. And we realize that the subtle energies and the conscious intentions actually can be guided and harmonized in this social container. We invited our members to watch these documentaries and films, and we discussed with each other about the relationship between human and them. Them include forests. For example, the Mythos world actually talk about the magic of forests, and the viruses and the fungi, chimpanzees, water, soil. And eventually we agreed with each other that actually everybody, and with all those other nature lives, and live in one health system. Especially in the pandemic season, we found out we cannot rely on any vaccine, because all of the vaccine development actually is far behind the evolvement of the viruses and human life. So we will have to go back to our way of life, and to change our actions and change our daily habits to transform the society to sustainability. We also invite our members to read books. We ask them questions so that they can do research and think about them. For example, we ask questions about how to practice minimalism in life. Describe your most beautiful memory with the nature by sharing an old photo, a poem, an essay, a painting, or a song. We use this karaoke app to recommend everybody listen to a song named "Give Thanks with a Grateful Heart" and learn to sing it, and record and share your the singing recording in the karaoke app, and share with everybody else. And at the same time, when we go into the Zoom discussion session, everybody is asked to provide answers to the following questions. What is the type of a nature life that you want to thank the most? Who is the person to whom you are the most grateful? And how do you see yourself at this moment? What do you want to be thankful for to yourself? So this is the video. I'd like to quickly share with everybody.
像一颗尘土，有谁看出我的脆弱？
天地虽宽，但这条路却难走。我看见这人间坎坷辛苦。
我还有多少爱？我还有多少泪？ 要苍天知道我不认输。感恩的心，感谢有你，把我的手，让我用勇气做我自己。感恩的心，感谢命运，花开花落你，伴我一生，让我勇气做我自己。感恩的心，感谢命运，花开花落，我一样会珍惜。感恩的心，感谢有你。
We also have designed this session to share everybody's personal experience and life experience that they went through spiritual wounds and later they recovered. One example is we have a member. Her natural name is Tide. She shared a story with a 6th floor tall magnolia tree, which right in front of her room window. But after she stayed with this tree for 10 years, when one day when she was when she finished her school and came back to apartment, and her grandma told me that the tree was cut down. And so after that, she sealed the window by using some old newspapers, and she never opened that window again in the next 10 years. She had some very beautiful memory with this magnolia tree. She finished her schoolwork when smelled this very beautiful the sweet taste of this the magnolia flower, and at night she went to sleep with this beautiful smell. But after the tree was cut down, she feel like part of her was cut down, and that took her a long time to recover. And we also have another member. Her nature name is Panda. After the parents divorced, she lost the confidence and she was blind by classmates, but only because the love he received from his stepmother, that he picked up himself and came out of this shadow by even befriending with those kids who used to belie him. Another example is remember, her nature name is Fish Hawk. Her parents divorced when she was a kid, and that impacted her attitude toward life and family and friendship. So one day when her son asked her a question about whether when I grow up, the world would become a real garbage world in Toy Story, the cartoon movie. She was very, very scared, and she doesn't want her kid to live in this darkness of a garbage world, and she cherished this families so much. So that is turning point that she realized she have to involve into environmental protection. So also we after all these sessions, we found out actually separation is source of our greatest wounding, and disconnection from nature is a pivotal axis for needed change. And we have to healing the relation with the nature, so otherwise we will not heal our world. And the social healing work by restoring deep bonds of connectivity and wholeness, align itself with optimal evolutionary creativity with the love and the kindness. And only spiritual healing can guide the past and the present towards future of positive changes and construct actions, forgiveness and harmony, steering clear of being constantly trapped in mutual victimization and punitive actions. So we designed another section of from green spirit to green action and to challenge our daily life habits. So we have a member practicing 1 week of life as a beginner minimalist. And we have another member practicing 1 week of zero food waste and clean plates. We also have a member practicing a week of waste sorting, and another member, just to practice 1 week of zero plastic bag. And finally, we designed this section of speech. We encourage everybody to give a speech about her or his future green dream. So we have this member give a speech on my dream to become a green and eco-conscious citizen and environmental responsible entrepreneur. Another member shared his dream to build up a PDA down farm for more people to eat healthy and live in sustainability. So when finally everybody graduated from this training camp, we get a certificate. It's a digital certificate. So we experience the whole the green spirit growth, and we realize that embracing the negative identity is crucial. It's the first step. When our narratives begin to crumble, the very sense of self is actually shaken, which leads to the acknowledgement of a much broader reality, which incorporates the truth of others. And the next step is by recognizing the truth, we are deconstructing the false narrative. The truth is the earth doesn't belong to man, man belongs to earth. And thirdly, the constructing new narrative start forming from 1 to billion. What is from 1 to billion means? It means from self-identity to ecological identity, from individual to tribe, to nation, to globe, to planet, and to cosmos. The ever-expanding spiral is also modeled for the evolution of consciousness, being more aware of larger and more inclusive situation. And finally, there's no straight way, no linearity, no fixity over wholeness. The evolutionary and the creative universe inevitably creates a way for life to move forward by a spiral way, a way of yin and yang. So that is my presentation today, shared with everybody. And if anybody have any question, we would love to get connected and let's talk and discuss. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Barbara. That was very inspiring. And
Thank you.
yeah, of course, I would love to hear you more later on during the question and answer portion. So right now we are going to be taking a short break. So time for us to, go to the washroom or grab some food or probably stretch your arms and legs for the time being. So this is just going to be 5 minutes and we'll see you in a bit. All right. Hello. Okay, there we go. So welcome back to our webinar. So as you can see, it's nighttime from where I'm from, but it's a pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker for our next topic, which is all about towards AI as a universal right. So let me just share my screen real quick. Okay. All right. So I have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Léa Gagnon-Roberge, and she recently graduated from McGill University in the Desk of Health Management faculty. She has a bachelor's degree of commerce and general management with concentrations in digital innovation and business analytics. She's now the program manager in artificial intelligence at Yuhui Fusion, and she manages a team of project coordinators composed of university students in the field of AI. These coordinators work with high school students to introduce them to the world of AI and ultimately create an AI-based solution to answer a need in society. Youth Fusion's mission is to create ties between school systems and the community to involve at-risk youth in innovative and meaningful educational projects that contribute to their learning, their qualifications, and their social integration. Léa is passionate about artificial intelligence and especially the ethical issues surrounding this field. She believes that under the right circumstances, AI could make the world a better place. So I am now giving the stage to Léa.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. Is it working?
Yes.
Perfect. So today I want to talk about AI as a universal right. So often when people hear the word artificial intelligence, they think of humanoid-shaped robot taking over the world. AI isn't that. However, AI is changing our world. And for the artificial intelligence field to become planet responsible, we first need to take our own responsibility towards it. And this presentation, I'll start by introducing AI, then I'll move on to the risk AI can have on our world. After that, I'll explain how AI could be a universal right, and I'll finish by presenting you some AI's application in the fight against climate change. So AI, what are we talking about? Artificial intelligence reassemble all technique and theory trying to simulate an intelligent behavior. The fuel of AI is big data. Big data refers to the extremely large data set of information. With big data, AI is able to discover patterns, trends, and our associations. Big data is in constant evolution. It is defined by the three V's: volume, velocity, and variety. Artificial intelligence can be used for many purposes. Usually, one AI is created for specific tasks, such as visual or audio recognition. And we do interact with AIs every day, from virtual assistant to targeted ad on social media and even spam filter. The largest and most funded AI companies can be found in the United States and China. However, AI is a global race and many countries can be considered as strong AI leaders. According to the firm Conlectica, Canada, Germany, Japan, and South Korea have equal dominance as of China. And it goes the same way when we compare France, Israel, and the UK to the US. But of course, many factors can influence AI dominance, such as funding, number of startups, talents, intellectual property, and so on. If we look at who's doing the most research on AI, we have a mix of academic and industrial organizations. The leader is Google, followed by Stanford and the MIT. We also find Facebook in that list. There's also several academic institutions in different countries that shows that AI is really a dominant field in the 21st century. The term artificial intelligence was adopted in 1956 at the Furnace Dortmund conference, but the possibility of recreating intelligence has long been in the human's mind. And the incredible rise in technology in the last decades has enabled the AI's field to reach new potential. So now I want to talk about the risk of letting AI run wild. Why should we bother making AI a universal right? The reality is that AI is changing our world in a drastic manner and at an increasing speed. And if you want AI to be used in a responsible way, we need to act now. The three main concerns I would like to talk to you about as to why we should consider making AI a universal right are knowledge asymmetry, algorithmic bias, and automation. So starting with knowledge asymmetry. Fueled by big data, AI algorithms are now reaching new potential. Things we didn't think were possible decades ago are now in the front for reach. Technology advances at an increasing speed, at an increasing pace, but a common understanding about it doesn't. Most people don't know much about what's really going on behind the screens. And knowledge asymmetry is a big problem. User data is valuable, but often we don't realize how or in what way. Your data is always being collected and used, wanted or not. This data is used to incite you to consume. We should kind of all be concerned about this whole system that we call surveillance capitalism. But first of all, we need to understand the repercussion of our own action online. So let's say you click on a link to an online recipe. Next time you go on the web or social media, you'll probably see more articles related to cooking or food. And this is because an AI has tried to match your preferences in order to show you more things you might like. And you might think this is not so bad. Maybe you'll find some interesting recipe. But let's look at another example. Imagine someone click on an article claiming that climate change isn't real. Next day, the same person might see another article about that subject and might choose to click on this one. And rapidly, this person might be faced with multiple articles, real or not, all claiming that climate change isn't real. And if all the information you're faced with is saying the same thing, you might start believing it yourself. And I'm not saying that it will happen like for sure or that fast. I'm just trying to show you how it works. Your online feeds reflects your preferences and your opinions. And this can be dangerous because you're only faced with one side of almost any situations. And this is even more dangerous as more and more people are using online media as their primary source of information. And moreover, this whole system incites you to consume. We are constantly faced with targeted ad, and Facebook is so confident about its algorithm that if you're a company, you're not paying per number of views anymore, but per number of sales. So Facebook can guarantee that your ad will result in sales. And this is just a recipe for overconsumption, which is kind of bad. Then algorithmic bias. So it refers to machine errors that create an unfair outcome. For example, a recruitment tool that's privileging men resume over woman resume. And those kind of biased articles arise from unfair data or from the bias of the programmer. This is one reason why the field of AI needs diversity within the people creating the algorithms. But this alone is not sufficient. So the data collected also need to be fair. But how could we collect data, unbiased data, when the access of technology around the world is nothing but fair? And lastly, automation. It refers to a process that requires non or minimal human assistance. The replacement of human work by automated process has already begun. And this fourth industrial revolution will change the job market all over the world. Automation can have positive and negative effects on our world. It all depends on the way we shape our relationship with machine. So now let's look at the meaning of AI as a universal right. What will it look like? At first, and I think this is true for almost anything, an access to proper and free education is necessary. Then, the focus should be on universal declaration, guiding creation and use of AI. And finally, we should address the gathering of data, making sure that no one is left behind. So education is primordial for everyone, everywhere. Now it is a privilege to be educated, but we can all agree that it should be a universal right. In the quest of making AI a universal right, it is only logical that everyone should know the basis of what artificial intelligence is. And furthermore, technology is so omnipresent in our society nowadays that having a basic understanding about it is only essential. To pursue this idea, digital citizenship needs to become universal. The concept of digital citizenship is one that I find really interesting and essential in the world we live in. Basically, it refers to the responsibility one should have when using technology, so any digital device, from computer to internet to smartphone. Digital citizenship focuses on several aspects, such as empathy, security, and digital literacy. One that I find really important is understanding user data and your digital footprint. So digital footprint is any mark an individual live online, every website visited, every piece of information shared online, those are user data. And as I said, this data is being collected, whether it's legal or not, by an organization. So being aware of a digital footprint can enable us to understand technology better. And the idea is not to fall into conspiracy theory, thinking that we're being watched all the time, but really to understand our own user data and to act responsibly concerning that. And reducing this knowledge gap between data scientists and every citizen can help society make a better, more ethical use of this technology. Another thing we should advocate is changing the mentality towards our relationship with machines. So most AI algorithms are created with the goal of being fully automated. So people just have to sit and watch, and there's no need to understand how it works. And this philosophy is kind of terrible. Instead, I think we should focus on cooperation between machine and humans. We should aim at creating AI with the goal of enhancing human capabilities and not replacing them. Humans shouldn't just like sit and watch, but fully participate and collaborate with machines. And the goal again is to close or reduce the knowledge gap between AI algorithms and humans. So self-driving car would become super assistant, but it would still need a human control. Or where center weapons system would be used instead of little autonomous weapons. This center term is quite interesting. It was popularized in the chess world, where collaboration amongst human and computer would beat the unassisted software it was in competition with. So the idea is really to view machine as an ally and not simply a tool. Furthermore, the discussion about AI responsible development need to result into concrete universal guidelines. So, for example, in the city I live in, about 3 years ago, citizens came up with a Montreal Declaration for Responsible Development or Artificial Intelligence, or the Montreal Declaration. The discussion led by the University of Montreal brought up experts and stakeholders from different backgrounds in order to come up with principles to structure the use and creation of artificial intelligence. This democratic process led up to 10 principles based on values such as equity, democracy, inclusion, privacy, and environmental responsibility. And then there's the access to data. So universal rights mean that everyone should be included, no matter the country, the religious belief, your social class, or anything. Often when challenges arise, marginalized groups suffer the most. Disparity between the most fortunate and the less privileged deepen. And the rise of technology and automation represent a big challenge. We ought to protect and give the same right to everyone. And furthermore, we should put emphasis on granting access to technology to everyone. If we aim at creating unbiased algorithms, we need to collect data to represent every human and every part of our wonderful planet. So lastly, I would like to present you 3 AI projects that aim at fighting climate change. First, Sophie is a soft robotic fish created by the MIT. This is a robot that can swim on its own in the ocean while monitoring its surroundings. It's kind of like a self-driving car, but instead it's a self-swimming robot. It could enable marine biologists to monitor ocean life with better efficiency and less human disturbance. Second, Rainforest Connection is using AI to prevent illegal deforestation and halt animal poaching. The system is trained to recognize logging and truck sounds among the natural forest sounds. So little devices are placed in the forest and send real-time alert when they recognize specific harmful sounds. And finally, Hilberg will be a healing iceberg-shaped skyscraper. So the idea is to use green technology to reverse the effect of climate change, like using a laser to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. And this idea is pretty futuristic yet. This project is only at the idea stage, but it has already been awarded a mention in the Evolo Skyscraper competition. So their projects are wonderful and can really make a positive impact on our planet. Artificial intelligence can have a huge potential when it comes to planetary health. However, it can also lead to negative impact, such as overconsumption and increasing inequality. So it's up to us to take responsibility towards AI in order to make our world a better place. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I guess we'll move to the Q&A. Okay. Yeah, so I hope you can still hear me. So some questions for Barbara that I noted was what has the response from academics to PTA and Green Growth Spirit camp been in general?
Well, I think that the role of academia actually is quite important, you know, especially when our PTA was trying to design either spirituality oriented training or knowledge based training, because from both approaches we will have to rely on the academic research, coming from the academia. For example, especially when we try to do this knowledge-based training process. For example, like we include reading books. We include the sessions about reading books and watching films. Actually, all those materials are really coming out from the very serious systematic research from academia, especially the couple of the documentary films I mentioned there, about the exploration of viruses and fungi, and especially what is the role of a fungi for a society transformed into a more sustainable way of, for example, creating new medicine, or monitoring impact of climate change on the evolution of the fungi, and what is that the meaning to the public health, and all these themes and all these the stories or the sort of stories delivered through documentary film are actually coming out of systematic academia research. So I think that there is some sort of a gap, between how academic research can be effectively transformed into a more powerful media message, and how institutions, for example, NGOs or educational platforms or social enterprises like us, PTA, could utilize all these resources more effectively and deliver the message to the public. I think there must be some sort of more effective coordination between academia, media, and the NGOs or the organization in societies, to work together.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Please raise your hands if you have questions. So another question that was related to this kind of ecotherapy, and whether you had measured the health outcomes experienced by participants before and after taking part. Did you conduct an evaluation study in terms of the health benefits and impacts? Right.
I think that is a very, very good question. We haven't conducted kind of a survey, but I definitely think that we should do that. And so right now we are looking for a second, the second training camp, and so we will definitely include this survey part into our second training camp, and to see how we'll be able to convert this more like psychoanalysis approach to more like probably more quantitative, some sort of survey result, and hopefully we can do something about that.
That would be very, very interesting. I still can't see any hands up. I had a question for Léa because of access to data, and because I work a lot with chemical management and the effects of chemical pollution. And access to data is already a problematic issue for the sound management of chemicals. A lot of data is considered proprietary data because it's very expensive to generate, and sometimes hidden from the public, whilst it's important for public health purposes. I wondered if you had any views on this, any experience of this in maybe different sectors, how this issue of proprietary data we can get around this issue.
Yeah, well, I think this is a really big issue, and I think the way to get around is really to all try to be in the debate about this access to data, and try to put pressure on our government to act about it, because right now it's only big companies that kind of like have all the data and that keep that data from themselves. And even though they found some great project about environmental change and so on, if they have all the data, they kind of have all the power. But this is a big issue, and I think there's no easy solution to it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Last call for anyone that may have any questions. I can't see any hands up or anything. So Kévin wanted to ask one question. So
yes, that would be one. Thank you. That would be one question to Léa. So Léa, you advocate for us, like kind of everybody, engaging into these principles you presented, augmentation, equity toward AI. My question is, what are the spaces in which I can myself, for example, get involved to make these principles respected by AI developers, governments, and so on? So what can I do as a citizen to engage into that?
Yeah, sure. Well, the Declaration of Montreal that I was talking to you about, it's actually one that everyone can sign, and everyone can participate in that and try to create awareness about it. But it's translated in many languages also, so it can be shared. And I think like the first step that everyone can do is just starting to have those conversations with people around them, to try to see what's real, what's not, and that's the beginning. But I put in my slide the link to the Montreal Declaration. So once it will be shared, you can go see it. It's really nice. So yeah, I think that could be a first step.
okay, so so Pearl Anne, you wanted to ask a question about academia, research community. Please go ahead.
Yes, so thank you. So I wanted to ask a question in academia or research community. So I'm wondering, what do you think in terms of reducing flights, especially for conferences? Do you think that offsetting such as tree planting activities during conferences would be useful, or do you think that the research community would are open to this kind of offsetting activities?
Thank you, Pearl. Yes, so the question of carbon offsetting is really tricky, and this is the subject of huge debates. To my view, this is something that could actually bring worse things than solve the issue, because for one, so most of the criticism against carbon offsetting is first that once you know that you can offset your emissions, you're more prone to travel, actually. It doesn't work in the way it should. So the traditional view is like, first you reduce flying, then you mitigate your displacements when you can't, and then in last order, you offset what you emitted. But well, we're not really sure that it works in that way. And the fact to know that you can actually offset your emission may make you more prone to fly. So this is the first criticism. The second is that planting trees is something that will capture carbon in 20 years. And once you release CO2 in the atmosphere, you do it now when you fly, so it's done. And it will stay in the atmosphere for at least 100 years. In comparison, a tree that you will plant today, you don't have ideas on how long it will stay and how long it will store the CO2 you emitted. So I can share resources on that debate. This is a very huge debate. My point is that in first instance, you should keep in mind this: reduce, mitigate, and offset in that strict order when thinking about reducing impact. And well, the question is even open whether even in the last instance, offsetting is going much good than bad. This question is really open. And I can share you some documentation I can share with you after the seminar, if you want.
Thank you, Kévin.
Thank you very much. I suppose we've run over a little bit. I'll leave the floor to Pearl-Anne to summarize the talks and discussions.
Thank you so much, Olwenn. So we've come to the end of our webinar. So this webinar, as a summary, this webinar session demonstrates to us that it is possible to do our crafts and life passions into something sustainable, ecologic, and planet sensitive, regardless if we are in the field of academia, innovations, or artificial intelligence. Our sincerest thanks to our speakers for imparting their knowledge and expertise on this topic, and to all of you here today. We hope that you've gained new knowledge and insights that you could apply in your own professional and personal lives, and be an inspiration to others in becoming planet responsible professionals. To be updated of our future webinars and activities, please visit our website at planet.com with an H in the middle, and follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And until next time, keep safe, everyone. And thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.